It's your story.
You want this episode to be my story today, not yours?
Yes, but I can do my story. Yeah, I was just listening to do you know a lot of podcasts? They are about one guy. They invite a guest and they just tell their story.
Yeah.
And I think we have to tell our story first.
I see your point. When it comes to taking a man with your bare hands, it's rather risky, isn't it?
You're very clever, Mr. Conant. There's one flaw in your cleverness. It is as easy to kill you with these as with that.
Hey everybody, this is Josh Hagen and Tommy Macias. So for people that don't know who Tommy is, you probably don't follow that much judo.
We took 2 golds in judo this week. I don't know what my heart might explode, but we've got a chance.
Judo is like different level.
Look, judo is the best, in my opinion, for someone who's wearing clothes.
Joining me is Josh Hagen. Nobody better to talk judo with us.
How deep would you go? Judo's a good thing to learn, man, just period.
Should I get started?
Let's start.
All right. This is Tommy Macias and Josh Hagen, Judo's Calling. We are on to episode 4 now. And yeah, it's been good. I got 2 pieces of feedback actually that I thought I'd give.
Shots fired.
One is last episode when I talked about Jason Morris, I referred to him as defending Olympic champion accidentally, vice champion or silver medalist. So to clear that up. Second was I spoke to Amidio Contraccio. I should pull up his message. So for those that don't know, Judo Data, good buddy of mine, Amidio Contraccio from Italy. He runs the Judo Data. And we had a conversation about whether or not something was kosotogake, or if it was taniotoshi. So when we do this sort of hip pump behind, which people call switch, which is a taniotoshi in many people's minds, we call it switch taniotoshi, or your reference was that it was kosoto. You made the argument that it was kosoto because we're not dropping our weight down, basically, right? And that you're standing, your hips push through, correct? Is that basically your stance?
Yes.
So we need a drum roll to see who was right, according to Emidio. So Emidio, first of all, says he's not, he doesn't make those decisions. But in his opinion, it is kosotogare. So we watched a video of Vieira doing it as an example, which is similar in a sense to Yartsev. We take the example, we always take the example of the execution as the tori. So it's the tori doing the technique. It's like the intention of how they're doing the technique, not necessarily how they fall. So he said, take the example of the execution with uke. Everything is perfect, but when you're in contest, the dynamics completely change. So in the end, they might end up falling that way, but you have to take into context like how they applied it. Classify kosoto is because tori sweep from the outside. It's pretty clear he's not using the body weight. He's not using the body weight to apply the throw, sort of pulling him over. He's using the sweeping motion where taniotoshi uses the body weight to sort of prop and pull you over the body. So he would classify it as a kosotogare, or if it's hooked, then kosotogake, and not a taniotoshi because you're not sort of using your body to pull them over you. Even if you come down, it's that sweeping motion of the leg or drive of the leg.
Totally agree with him. He's smart.
Yeah, clearly.
Let's see if someone from Kodo can answer the question.
Yeah, that'd be next. What'd you hear back? You got any info you want to tell me about last week?
Of course, of course, my father called me and said, I can speak English. I have no problem with that.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
But he don't want to be a guest.
Okay. So we'll have to see if we can twist his arm.
Yeah.
Tell him you won't come home for like Christmas dinner if he doesn't come on. Hold him to the fire.
He will be a guest for sure.
Any other feedback?
Not really. Maybe we didn't talk about some much interesting thing last week.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe this week will be more interesting.
Yeah, hopefully it will be interesting for me for sure.
Right. You
Because
want to get started? You want to
there's
be
some
the
really new stuff. Yeah,
you want to take over hosting duties today?
hosting duties.
Yeah, you
Let's go.
okay.
Okay, so our plan for today is hear the story about Josh Hagen and his life, how judo become so big part of his life. So Josh, please tell me, why did you start doing judo?
Okay, so it feels funny. It feels kind of daunting to tell that because it makes me feel like I'm of importance that people would want to hear it. But I do think just as a whole, there's been some cool things that I've got to do in my judo career that are exciting that I think other people would appreciate. So maybe it's worth telling, I guess.
I
But
think it's always worth telling.
okay,
For me, it's always interesting to hear why someone start doing judo because I don't know how big it is in Canada, but in
right,
Sweden and Denmark, it's really small. So how to get into the sport,
right.
it's the hardest thing, I think. So I
Yeah.
want to hear.
Yeah, so my father, he came from a very humble family in a really small town. And so he did a little bit of judo as a child, but once he needed a uniform, a judo gi, he was pulled out of judo, like they didn't have much money. So he did it a little bit as a child and liked it. And the sensei, who was a Japanese immigrant there, ran like a pretty cool little program, I guess, for a couple decades. And then from there, I ended up being the baby of 5 children. And so my oldest brother, I have a sister, a brother, a brother, a brother, and then me. And so my oldest brother had a lot of energy. So they wanted to use up that energy. So they put him in everything they could. And a guy that my dad worked with, who's an electrician, started a judo club in the town hall of our town's like 2,700 people. And so he started this little judo program. My brother Travis took to it, and he was really super athletic. I remember him doing backflips when he was a teenager, and he was good at hockey. He just did everything well. He could play guitar, he could sing, he played rugby, he did judo, and so athletic and excitable. So he started doing it, fell in love with it. And then my mom would take us to judo. She'd take all of us. So the whole family would go to judo as we were growing up. And then eventually my sister wouldn't go as much because she was older. And we would always go. So from childhood, I was at the dojo at infancy, and I don't even remember the first time I went. And I did see a little video where I was like, I don't know, 2.5 or 3. So they're bowing in the class, and I'm on the floor behind the mats, and I'm bowing with the class. And then they're doing the warm-ups, and I'm on the floor doing the entire warm-up. And then they're doing uchikomi, and like little 2-year-old me, I'm doing like seoi nages and osotos by myself on the floor, like shadow uchikomi. And so I just begged to do judo every day. And then one of my other brothers had started as well. So at like 3.5, they finally let me do judo, and I was like totally in love and never wanted to miss a class. And it was my absolute favorite thing to do. And we were far from the city, like 3 hours from any major city. So it's just this little club and yeah, pretty strong little program for a little town.
You start training with your brothers, or
Yeah, I would. My one brother is closest to me in age, Sean, who competed internationally. I was actually a little heavier than him when we were growing up. He was very little. I was little too, but we were little. And so we were late bloomers in growth. So I was his training partner all the time. He was also pretty mean, so he beat me up pretty good, just as big brothers do. But we did a lot of judo together, probably maybe too much. Like we'd get a little sick of each other.
how small was it dojo?
It
Many people
was,
were.
yeah, the dojo was about 20, 25 kids. But the thing that was crazy, this shows also it's the time. So this would have been around 1986. $15 a month to do judo. Family group rate, as many members of the family as you want, was $25 a month. So 3 of us did judo for $25 a month. Yeah. So, and then
You all were in the same group the whole time, or
yeah, everybody, we didn't, he would only teach one class a night. And so he had some adults, and he sort of had this assistant, Ray Thaw, and there's another guy, I can't remember his name, but great big guy. Charles McLaughlin started running a program in the next town. He ended up opening 2 dojos in the towns, and obviously neither one is about making money. It's just like spreading judo as the historically judo does. And so we would just sort of go to, and then we started going to both dojos so we get more judo. And there'd be some kids in Port Elgin. It's 7 kilometers away. It's a town of like 6,500. And then our home dojo. And the mats were kept under the stage, and the place wasn't heated, so you roll out, and they were the old school tatami. They basically, when you picked them up, they didn't bend. So when you did break falls on these things, your palms would be beat red, and just it was tough. Like it was like a tough way to learn, but we were so excited to do judo in that town that we didn't care, you know.
How many times a week did the program was?
We would do judo Sundays and Wednesdays, I think, in that town, and then we go to Port Elgin, and I think it was Tuesdays and Thursdays. And class was like, I don't know, an hour and a half, and you'd set the mats out and put them away every day. Like at a very young age, I'd be lifting up the mats on my back. And so we would do that. And just like traditional classic stuff, we would do like sometimes there'd be classes where I swear we did ukeme the whole time because it was so important to learn how to do a proper break fall. So we would just do obscene amounts of break falls. And then I think I was about 5. It's a little different now, but back then, sort of when you went to judo tournaments in Canada, it wasn't really an option. Like if you did judo, you went to the tournaments. So like when we'd go to a tournament, every kid in the club would go pretty much. So I think my first tournament, I was like 5 years old. Yeah.
And how did that go?
Silver medal.
Silver.
Yeah. I was
One
good.
fight, or it was more than one fight?
Yeah, it would have been more than one. Because again, the tournaments were pretty big. Like when I was a kid, things have shifted, I think, in a healthy way. But when I was a kid, you'd go to a tournament and I'd be like 7, 8 years old, and there'd be 35 in my division, which now you don't see those numbers really in too many places. It's not that there's less judo. It's just that if you did judo, the senseis were like, we all go to the tournament. So the tournament would be like a lot of kids. Half those kids maybe shouldn't have been there because they'd get sort of lit up, and then maybe they'd quit judo. But I remember as a kid, we would do true double elimination. So if you lost a match, you'd come all the way back around and you could still get first. You just have to beat that person that was in the semifinal. So I remember like there was a couple times when I was a kid where I won a tournament. I would have had like 6 matches at like 8 years old, which is crazy because of the true double elimination and the size of the divisions. There was a tournament too that always stressed me out. It was in Buffalo, New York, and it was called the AmCan. They used to do it in May, and if the division was over like 40 people, they would cut the division in half and make it 2. And I remember my half of the division was 38 people. So that means there was like 76 kids that had come that were like 9 years old to compete at that tournament. You'd have an opening ceremonies. They carry flags from the different states and stuff. It used to be a really cool, huge event.
So for how long were you in this town and in this dojo?
Yeah, so I grew up there. So I lived there till I was like 17. But what would happen is my 2 other brothers older. So when I was like 7, Sean's 9, Travis would have been like 15. We started traveling to Hamilton, Ontario, which is a 3-hour drive. Now we naturally would go there because my mom grew up there. And at the time there was a club called Kawasaki's Rendokan. It actually still exists. And that club was huge. Like at the time, you'd go there and there'd be like 25 black belts training at one time. So we would go there. We started going on weekends, and then we'd spend the weekend with my grandmother and grandfather in Hamilton. And we would do a kids class. I think it was like 10 to 11:30. Then we do a kata class from 12 to 1. Then we have a break from 1 to 2. And then we do the high performance class from 2 to 4. But the high performance class wasn't really for kids, but because my brothers were doing it, I was allowed to go. So I would do like, what is that? 1.5, 2.5, 4.5 hours of judo on a Saturday at like 7
How
years
old are you
old.
now?
How old am I now?
Yeah.
41, turned 42 this
Oh no, at that point.
Oh, at that time. I was like 7. I was 7 when I started going. So I was like, I was like 7 years old.
Travel to get better trainings.
Yeah. And because my siblings would be going, like my brother Travis was a teenager and he competed, and Sean. So we would go and then we would just do judo the whole day. We'd stay there and we'd get this really delicious bread pizza, we'd call it. It's like pizza without cheese. That was like this. It was the best. So we'd be there the whole day. We'd do judo all day, and then we'd either go home that night or we'd stay overnight. And then as we started training more and more, and that 2 to 4 class would be the youngest people would be like 14, 15. So I was training with like teenagers at 7 and 8. And then as we got older, sometimes on Sundays, we'd go to Kitchener on the way. So it was sort of on the way home. And there was a strong program there by Bob Zettel called Asahi. And then we started going on Fridays to Toronto, which is, again, it's sort of all in the same region. So we'd go from my hometown to Toronto Friday night. We'd go from there to Hamilton. we'd spend the night and do judo all day Saturday, and then sometimes on Sunday we'd stop in Kitchener on the way and do judo again. And then when I got to be a teen, we would go to Hamilton on Wednesday nights. I'd get picked up immediately from school. We'd drive all the way to Hamilton, 3 hours, do judo, and then drive home. We'd get home at like 1 a.m. Then we do the Toronto Hamilton thing and sometimes Kitchener. And that would have been at like 13. We started doing all that. So a lot of time in the car.
And did you still did the training at the local club or?
Yeah, until I was like maybe around that age that we started traveling that much, I didn't do as much judo at the local club. And then the one thing I'll say is we were traveling so much and training so much that you can only speak from your experience. But when I was around the age of 12 and it's really hard, I was doing so much judo for so long. That was a period of time where that's when I almost quit. I thought for sure I was going to quit. I wasn't enjoying it. It wasn't fun because I would do all this driving and I would do judo for like 5 hours on a Saturday. And it was sort of like, you have to do it because you're there, but you're exhausted. It sort of felt like a job, but I was only 12 years old. And
did your parents push you to do it, or was it your brothers that pushed, or
internally I wanted to do it, but I think there was like a certain pressure. You know, my parents, they were trying to be supportive, but especially my dad, it was like, you know, we drove all this way. You do the classes. You know, we did all this for driving and stuff to get here. So do the classes. So that made it hard at times, I think. It was trying to be supportive, but I think that led to like young age feeling like you're doing a job rather than enjoying judo, which made it really hard and probably sapped me of a little motivation, feeling like I wasn't not choosing. I could quit, but it sort of felt like I should keep doing it. So that was the tough time.
Age of 12, right?
Yeah, 12, 13 was when it got really tough.
And you're still doing judo today. So what changed?
That's hard. I think not long after that's when I got to start going to national championships, which was exciting. And it was a big trip. So getting to do this big trip and travel across the country and compete, I think was a pretty big carrot, which motivated me again to do more, you know, to get more involved. Is like, I wasn't just doing the local tournaments. Like we'd go to a lot of tournaments too. I got athlete of the week once because in like 15-month period, I went to something like 22 tournaments at like 9 or 10. And I took like 21 gold and a silver or something like this. So we were just on the road forever because everything was far. But I think, yeah, getting the big trips of starting to go to nationals was fun. Feeling like you're getting better at it was fun. And then the other thing is I didn't know anything else. So it just felt like not doing judo didn't feel like an option. It's always been part of my life. It still has always been part of my life. So it like felt like a...
But you were always traveling with the family, or was it more people from the club, or?
Always just our family in the car forever. We didn't carpool. There's too many of us. So it was just be us. And then when I got a little bit older, like 15, 16, it would typically be my brother Sean in the back, me in the driver's seat because I was excited to drive, and my mom in the passenger seat. So Sean would sleep in the back on the way there, and mom and I would hang out. This is when we got older and travel wasn't in the house. And it would be the three of us traveling. Like when we'd go to Quebec Open in Montreal, which would be like an 8-hour drive for us, it would be the three of us. I'd be driving, mom sitting there. We'd talk the whole drive, and Sean would sleep.
But it was only you and your brothers that wanted to do something more with judo from the local club.
There was another family in the dojo, Chantel Primo. She became a junior national champion. Her brother Blaine, he was good. He was quite good. I don't know. I think he went to a nationals as well. They did quite a bit of judo, but we didn't travel with them very much. But they would go mostly to the dojo in Kitchener, and we were going to Hamilton, which in hindsight seems weird that we go to these two different dojos from the same place. They were just our neighbor town, like 7 kilometers away. But they were quite competitive for a while too. There'd be some other people that competed a little, but for the most part, it was like our family was just a little crazy and we did all this. Yeah.
And is the dojo still running today, or?
No, but there is a program in that neighbor town where they do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and my brother, the one that competed with me a lot, Sean, he helps run the program there. So that did occur. Yeah. And then the other thing, there's like one thing that I always remember is there was this one judo-gi that was made. So Frank Hatashita, who brought Fuji, he created the company Fuji that's in North America. His nephew now owns the company in Canada. His cousin, so Roman Hatashta, went to the 92 Olympics for Canada, and his cousin runs the program in the States or owns the business in the States. But there's this one gi that everybody had that had this Kodokan embroidery down the chest with kanji underneath, huge embroidery. And the gi would just last forever. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't like the most expensive, not like as expensive as gis are now. But I remember mom bought 1 year. I remember I got a bicycle that was way too big to be grown into, but it was awesome and I loved it and I've rode it for a long time. And the other thing I got in this similar period of time was I got this judo gi. And so what mom did is she hemmed the pants to make them way shorter, and she hemmed the sleeves. So the skirt was way too long, but the sleeves were hemmed up. And then as I grew, she would let the hem out and re-hem it. She didn't cut the fabric. She would re-hem it. So you had these like lines on the gi where the hem was for a year before she'd make the sleeve longer. And no joke, as a training gi, the gi still exists. It never fell apart. I wore that gi for probably like 8 years. The
You
top,
have a picture with the gi.
it's the pants disintegrated, but the top is still there. And we just kept releasing the hem. And like at like 20, I remember putting that gi on to train. So
At
yeah.
age 20.
Yeah, like the same gi that I wore when I was like 12. I like if I go to the house, it's still hanging in the closet at my parents' house. This one gi. It's like indestructible, man.
Yeah, but I can imagine you win all the fights when you have a gi that they have folded. It must be really hard to take grip.
Yeah,
That
well, it was pretty light though. It was a pretty thin fabric. Like I always remember there's a cute, what was it, the one brand, the mosquito gis. Do you remember those?
yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Those gis were like iron. This was a lighter gi, but yeah, it had this fold, and sometimes you'd stick your, if the hem wasn't perfect or started to come out, like I'd be putting the sleeve on, and my finger or my thumb would get caught in the hem when I was putting the gi on. But yeah, I had this sort of, yeah, it was pretty wild. Yeah, I wore that gi forever. At first, I felt a little embarrassed, but then I was like, this thing's pretty sweet, and then you're just wearing it all the time. And then, yeah, so we went from there to start going to nationals, and then at 17, I moved to Hamilton for college, but mostly to do more judo. So I moved out of my parents' house at 17 and started training there. And I was there for about 2 years. And then I went to Kitchener for 6 months in my period of time trying to decide what I was going to do, did judo there. And then I moved to Montreal.
Were doing judo there, or
Yeah, I was doing judo in Kitchener as well. So around
and your
9.
brothers have they stopped now, or are they
No.
still doing?
My oldest brother stopped. He had a very serious injury, freak accident where he fractured a vertebrae. But my brother Sean was still doing a lot of judo. We were in Hamilton together.
Hamilton as well, or in?
Yeah, in Hamilton. When I moved to Hamilton, Sean moved with me. And then I went to Kitchener for 6 months. I don't remember where he went in that 6 months. He was somewhere existing. And then after 6 months in Kitchener, that's when I decided to make the big move to Montreal. And Sean and I moved there together as well. That's our national training center with Hiroshi Nakamura. Nicola Gill was the head coach at the time, not the CEO
And then
yet.
you're 19, or?
Yeah, around 1920. Yeah. So we went there. And then I was there for 2 years. And then I just felt like for lots of reasons, it's a big pond and I was a little fish. I wasn't like the top guy. I was like, I'd taken fifth at nationals a couple times, things like that. And so you have one head coach for the entire national team. Nakamura Sensei ran the program primarily, and Nico saw the national team. And, you had guys like Fraser Will and Catherine Roberge and, some really quality players, Mary Lynn Chisholm. And so my own development wasn't going well. Like I wasn't doing as well as I liked. So rather than quit judo, I decided my last thing I was going to do was move to New York. So I moved to New York.
How is it working when you move to Montreal? You get invited to train there, or you just show up, or you need an
I'm not
invitation?
sure. At that time, I think you just sort of said, I want to go. And then I don't know. I don't even really know exactly how it works now, but sort of said you wanted to go. And it was like a private dojo that you could operate out of. And so we just sort of, we spoke. I remember there was like email or conversation or something with Nakamura Sensei that we were going to come. We didn't just show up without notification, but I think it was sort of like, we want to go and we're competitors. And it was sort of like, yeah, cool. Come on down. So I moved there around then. Yeah. And then at that time, again, it was like, there's a really good group of athletes from Ontario, like Nick Tritton and Sasha McMedovich. They were there. My brother and I went there. A couple others, but just can't think of their names right now. But a nice little group from Ontario was there, and we were all close in age. Sasha and Nick are a year and a half younger than me, somewhere in that range, and my brother's only 2 years older. Yeah.
So is it you spend a lot of time with the judo players off the mat as well when you moved to Montreal, or is you only see them at the dojo?
Yeah, no, that was cool. That's one of those things. Like that's most of my best friends are from judo from that experience. Sasha Lemontang as well from BC. I met him there. He was a really good player from BC, junior world team member. We'd spend all our time together. Like it's just a bunch of judo people living there. We'd go to the dojo and train. So we ended up living in this apartment building. On the one floor was Fraser and his girlfriend and Olia Berger and Mike Kim and I think his girlfriend in a 3-bedroom. There was like 5 of them. And then we had an apartment right above them. There was me, Sasha, my brother Sean, and then guys like Michael Popiel and so many people would end up staying with us for like a month. So then that turned into another apartment. So in this building that had maybe 12 apartments, 3 of the apartments were all judo people. So you're always hanging out and seeing each other, and we have like cook-off battles and whatever. And then Nick and Sasha lived in one place. There was one apartment that was like all these people from Alberta, the Alberta house. And so yeah, we'd spend like all our social time together as a group and did judo together, and we'd walk to the dojo because it wasn't that far. And yeah, just hang out there.
And how was the program there? How many trainings per week did you train?
We did judo Monday to Friday night. It would be 2 hours, and I'm trying to remember what the order was. I think Tuesdays and Thursdays was only Tachiwaza focus. I might have this the other way around, but I think Tuesdays and Thursday was only Tachiwaza. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you do Newaza and Tachiwaza, where you work technical and then randori and stuff. And then I think Tuesday and Thursday was only the Tachiwaza. And then Tuesday and Thursday morning was technical sessions. And then typically Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning was weights. So 7 times a week judo, two mornings a week technical, and 3 times two. And Tuesday, Thursday was only technical in the morning. And then Monday, Wednesday, Friday was weights back then. And pretty much everybody did that.
Were free or?
Pardon me?
And the weekends were free?
Yeah, weekends we didn't do a lot because there'd be tournaments and stuff. And then you're just trying to figure out a way to survive. So I worked at call centers where I would call businesses and do like surveys, and it was the worst. Like I would call businesses and I would be like, okay, just a little survey about smoking for your business or whatever. It's only a 5-minute survey. Like that's what our survey would say. But you knew this survey, if they actually agree, is 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, so then you'd call people, they'd be like, this survey seems a little long. Oh, don't worry. It's only a couple more questions. 15 minutes later, you know? So I worked at a call center.
I know those guys.
Yeah, it was the worst job I've ever had. So there was that. And you were supposed to work on weekends when you did that job, so many times on weekends. And I would just always say that I had an event. So I never worked on weekends when I did that job, but they paid money, you know, like it paid bills. So there's that.
Work.
Huh?
Even though you didn't show up for work.
Well, no, I would work during the week. It's just you were supposed to work so many weekends a month, and I would always have an excuse as to why I couldn't. And sometimes they were legitimate, but I was, oh, there's a tournament or whatever. So I think one weekend I ended up working, and I ended up calling someone in New York on a Friday night at their home, because the weekends was like family calls. On the weekdays, it was businesses. I'd rather call businesses than harass people at home, right? Yeah. So the one time I called was a Friday night. I called a guy in New York, and he said, "You effing Canadians." He was like, "Do you know what time it is?" Or it's like 9:30 at night. "I'm going to find you and kill you." Like he threatened to murder me over phoning him for this survey. So I did that, and I worked as a bar back and a promoter. So I would work for a bar where I'd hand out flyers to try to get people into the bar, or I'd stock the beer fridges at a nightclub, things like that. My brother was working as a handyman. I wasn't very handy. But yeah, so just random jobs to make it in the city. I was going to school for a period of time too there at Concordia University while I did judo.
And how long were you in Montreal?
Pardon me? How long? I was there 2 years. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 years.
And what happened then?
So, well, the team was again, uh, I wasn't like one of the big players, so I was training all the time and training with those guys, and I learned a lot of judo and I learned a lot about getting physically stronger. But similar to you in terms of conceptually, I wasn't the most, I wasn't the most impressive physically. Not a knock on you, but I wasn't the
Oh,
most.
yeah,
No,
I don't not a big
yeah,
physical either.
like I was definitely not Iliadis, and so and because of that. I was always really technically obsessed. Like I was obsessed with the in and outs of the technicalities of judo. I just couldn't get enough information. Why does this work and that not work? Why should I do this and not do this? So I was always like really driven that way, but I felt like my development wasn't great and the other players were already better. And people that I had beat, like I used to beat Nick Tritton quite a bit, he'd passed me and I just felt like while there was definitely improvements, I wasn't making the gains. And then the other part is I thought I was old, which is in hindsight a little crazy. Like I remember thinking at 21, 22 that I was way too old to keep doing this because I wasn't good enough, which I think was wrong. And so, yeah, so it was a really good experience and I built a really good social network that I still have to this day, like my closest friends. But I felt like while I got a lot better, it was sort of this hit and miss. It was like amazing, but then also it was sort of like sobering to think I was never going to be good enough. And so it sort of led me to wanting to quit judo. And then
Don't
in
you move anywhere before that? Before you quit?
well, I was going to quit. And then before I quit, I had conversation with Jason Morris and he was like, "No, you're good. Like we still got there's some juice we can still get out of this." And he said, "Why don't you come and stay with me for like a month? See how it goes. And if it goes well, stay longer." So I moved into his house in New York and I started living with him. And as coaches go, he's very different. So it was like a very, very technical program, which was like what I loved. So we would just do huge amounts of nagi komi with a lot of feedback on what throws I should be working on, how to work on them. And we do 100 nagi. When I moved there, when I was there, you had Travis Stevens moved there around the same time, Tony San Gimino, Nick Del Popolo was there. Um, Rhonda had just moved actually to New York from there. AJ Silverman, Nick Kosser, Hannah Martin. So all these people were living there. We would do judo 5 days a week, and we would start those sessions with 100 nagi komi every day. And so very different program of just like heavy emphasis on technical growth, like really massively. That was like what you worked on. So it'd be like, Josh, today, here's your 5 throws. I need you to work on same side Osoto, left on right Uchimata, left on right Tayo, chop Tayo, and maybe Ochigari or something. So you do 20 of each of those 5 throws on the pad, and I'd be working with often AJ Silverman or a lot of mat time with Nick Del Popolo then. Yeah. So I was there a year, and then that last like year and a half of my life, the other part that ended up being the end of my competitive career, in like a year and a half, I tore the LCL in my knee. I got a staph infection in my leg. I had a tumor removed from my back. I shattered my thumb and got a metal plate put in it. And at the end of the season in New York, I went home for a wedding. And the night before the wedding, I got an emergency appendectomy and had my appendix removed the night before I was the best man at a wedding. So I think the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of why I stopped competing was like a year and a half where just freak. Some of them were injuries, some of them were just different things, but it just felt like my body was telling me I needed to stop.
Yes, so you stopped then after
Yeah, that's when I stopped competing. Yeah.
and then you were 23 or
Yeah, 23, 24, somewhere in that range.
yeah, but you didn't stop doing judo. You
I did.
still
Yeah, I was doing judo. And then this is where the path veered away from judo is I decided because everybody told me I couldn't have a career in judo or that was sort of the aura, the vibe. So I went to school for sound engineering because I'm obsessed with music, as you know. So I went to school for sound engineering. I did this really intense program that was a year long where we did school 6 days a week and we were at school from 9 a.m. till 11:30 at night most days. And then the idea is I wanted to record bands in studios. And then you realize in Canada, that's not really an industry. You have to make a studio. So I finished school. I moved to Toronto. I started doing that, or trying to do that. And then I'm like, I don't have the money to build a studio in Toronto. So while I'm trying to find work and just doing jobs, I started coaching again. And then I start coaching more. And then all of a sudden I'm coaching literally at 3 dojos 6 days a week. And sometimes I'll be going from one dojo to the other. So then I start just coaching like crazy. And I think just my mentality as an athlete of being like technically obsessed with the sport really made a lot of sense for me transitioning into coaching. It's sort of like a catcher in baseball. Like I was so interested in the details. Like that's fascinating to me that it translated to me being able to connect with athletes.
So how long was your break from judo? Did you have a 2 years break or?
Yeah, around 2 years, but I was never totally away from it. Like I'd go to the dojo, I'd go to Montreal all the time and see my friends because they all lived there. Sasha still lived there, and Fraser still lived there, and Nick and Sasha all lived there. So I would still go there and hang out, and I'd still
do some trainings as well.
Yeah, and I'd do a little judo, and then I'd go home. So I never fully was away. It was just this period of time where I wasn't coaching and I wasn't competing. It was about 2 years, and then I started coaching. And then I started coaching a lot, and then I started coaching a lot more. And then in that period of time, and then another person I got to be friends with, really good friends with, was Sergio Pessoa, 2-time Olympian from Canada as well. So then after a period of time, Sergio and I decided we wanted to start a judogi company just for like ourselves. Like the goal wasn't to make this big business. It was like, let's sell judogis for our own clubs. So I was running a club and he was running a club. So we started Matsudo Canada. Like our goal was, oh, we'll just bring it in for us. And then it was like, okay, if we're going to bring it in, it needs to be bigger. So then we got a national distribution deal where we had the exclusive rights to distribute that brand. And then we started doing that. And from day one, there were some clubs like Mr. Suda in Abbotsford has a huge program, just really supported us. We wanted to sponsor a couple athletes. So we started by sponsoring a national team member. And then the business just got really, really busy. Like it got a little tough because he was based in Montreal and I was based in Toronto. So we started this company and we were just constantly chasing, building up our inventory. And I'm doing this while coaching. And so ran that business with him for a couple of years, and then always being coach minded. I ended up selling him my half of the company so I could start a full-time high performance dojo in Toronto, which I ran for a few years.
Now you are in Saskatchewan. How did you end up there?
Yeah, so from Toronto. Yeah. So it's not a direct route either. So I sell my half of the company, and then we start. I open this full-time dojo, which was beautiful, and so the business is a struggle because it's expensive and it's hard, but the judo program's doing great. So there's Ron Hanji and Sava Antich and Solomon Sharon, and all these kids are getting national medals and really improving. So I run that for a few years, and then struggling as a business the whole time. But sometimes I'd do like 12 hours of private sessions and by myself on top of running the whole schedule. And then I had small children and so it was kind of a wild time. And then from there, COVID occurs. And so I'm working a regular job, judo's shut down. And I'd seen this job posting for the Northwest Territories for executive director, and I didn't apply the first time. And I saw it posted again, and now we're well into COVID. And I just thought, you know what? I have a very good chance of getting the job based on my experience. So if I'm going to do this, I better be ready to take it. Like, am I serious? So thought about it quite a lot, had a number of conversations, and took on that role of executive director in Northwest Territories. And so when I did that, sort of changed the idea of how I wanted to operate. Wanted to build up revenue so that we could hire full-time coaches because everything's so remote. And in a 2.5-year period, we really grew that business and had judo all over, and we were hiring coaches from Japan and all this and bringing them in. And it was a really cool experience with some challenges, like separated from my children. They live in Ontario, and but amazing experience. And then from that, the head coach of Saskatchewan leaves to be the head coach of Wales, which then opens that opportunity, which led to discussion about would I be interested in this job. And sort of where Judo Saskatchewan was at the time in terms of development. And so it would get me doing more high performance again, which I love. That's my passion. And then also helping with the development. So we had a lot of discussion and pulled the trigger, and thus I'm here. Yeah.
Now you're in Saskatchewan.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the other path to all of this, which is interesting just in terms of like, someone had asked me before if I planned all these things, because the other thing I got to do is commentate the Olympics. So it's high performance coach to executive director of the North and commentate the Olympics and then be in this coaching position and the gi company. But it was never planned that way. It was just trying to like stay afloat. You're just doing all this to sort of figure out your way in the world and stay involved in the sport that you love so much. And what happened is I was producing all this content as a way to bring eyes to my judo program. And so I was producing videos and teaching videos and writing blogs that weren't typical blogs. It wasn't just like, why is judo judo? It was like why I have an issue with a training methodology, or why I think this training methodology is great, or what I did or what I don't do, or what I've learned, or, that kind of stuff. And people were reading it all over. I ended up working with a really cool company based out of Sweden called Athlete Analyzer, which was really cool. So I ended up working with them for about a year and helping promote their program, and which was really neat, sort of trying to create baseball statistics from judoka where they could track it on themselves. So I was working with them. And from all of that, the CBC ends up reaching out. They need a commentator for the Tokyo Olympics. And so they asked me to come and audition, which was cool. And again, you never know how things come together. So my experience working in studios, I didn't feel weird on a microphone, hearing my own voice commentating, because I went to school for sound engineering. Yes. So I'm sitting in the studio in CBC Toronto with executive producers and all these big wigs and feeling intimidated, but at least the environment didn't scare me. So the audition went well enough that they hired me, although in hindsight, I cringe when I hear it. And so that got me to call the Tokyo Olympics, which was then delayed. And as you know,
I remember this.
Yeah. You may have been involved in those games. And yeah, so I ended up calling those games, and then that led to me calling the Paris games. And so now I've called the first gold medal ever for Canada in judo, the first women's medal ever for Canada in judo with Jessica Klimkate, the second women's medal, and I've called 3 out of 8 Olympic medals in judo Canada's history, which is pretty cool.
You will have it in 4 years again.
Yeah, so their budget's really tight. So I hope to get to call the LA games, but it all depends on the team. So I didn't know if I would get to call these games. They didn't think I would, but the team was so strong that CBC eventually was like, yeah, we need to hire a commentator because I think we're going to take a gold medal. So eventually they said, yeah.
The team is good again in LA, then
I might get a phone call.
Yeah.
So pretty wild experience, but yeah, it's when you look at all those things together, I don't think most people have this path of like getting to a professional position by working with a company in Sweden and commentating in games and moving all across Canada. But so my path is not the like typical path. Usually high performance coaches' path is they start doing judo, they do it for a long time, they get really, really good, they become Olympians, they become world silver medalists, things like this. Then they get hired to coach and they become full-time coaches. I wasn't good enough as an athlete, so it made an indirect path for me to get here, but one that I honestly, in some ways, I might appreciate more than other people because I didn't know it would ever be possible. So I love what I get to do, and I feel fortunate that I got those like opportunities to do it.
You have any future plans?
Oh yeah, so many. A lot of future plans. I think some of them are hard to articulate, or there's like a shyness to articulate them because sometimes big dreams might seem laughable to others, if that makes sense. So my goal is to produce Olympic athletes, and I don't know if it'll ever work or if there's ever a way it makes sense, but one time even just to have the experience sitting in a chair as the coach at an Olympic Games would be pretty special, And so I've got to be involved in the Olympics in one way, in a broadcasting way. But if one day I could somehow be sitting in a coach's chair for an athlete, even if it was only for one match, just to get that experience, that would be what else can you do, like that's the big job. So
That's it.
yeah, so that's the journey. The other part that's interesting is like, when I look back, it's not only that I've got this career in judo when careers in judo weren't such a thing, but the amount of people that I associated with ended up with careers in judo, which is really cool. Like Nick Tritton runs a really big club in Montreal. Nick Del Popolo, who I've stayed in contact with, he does a lot of coaching at a New York two-time Olympian. Sasha McMedovich works with the national program. Sergio Pessoa owns Matsudo Canada and owns a club as well. Sasha Lemontang is runs the warehouse for Matsudo Canada out of BC. So it's like this close group of friends of mine not only become friends and social group and competitors together, but all of us professionally have stayed in judo, which I think to me that seems rare that we grew up knowing them. Like I've known Nick Tritton and Sasha McMedovich since I was like, I don't know, 12, 13 years old, so that's like almost 30 years now. So it's cool to see so many people like still professionally involved in judo in a significant degree.
I also think it's good to have those contacts when you're coaching in judo.
Right.
Contacts are always good.
Yeah. It's like Nick, he had an unbelievable teguruma. Can't use that so much now. But he also had a spectacular uranage and kosurogari. So for instance, whenever I'm in Montreal, I'm always picking his brain because he was so good at those. So just like, hey man, you got to show me that again, or here's how I'm doing it. Do you have any tweaks? That kind of thing. So it's really good access. Or I'll reach out to Sasha, say there's a struggle that I'm having with an athlete and trying to motivate him. Sasha McMedovich is just such a great people person and human connector, And so I'm having this difficulty with this athlete. He's amazing for giving me feedback, and Sasha Lemontang out of BC, just in life, one of my closest friends, and gives me feedback in general, just with life stuff. And so we've been close a long time.
Fantastic to hear that story.
Well, thank you. Hopefully
now everyone knows who Josh Hagen is.
Yeah, hopefully someone else other than just you finds it interesting. But if it's only you, then I'm fine with it, because that's our our friendship journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I knew most of it from before.
Yeah.
Always good to hear.
What's the other thing is to move away from me mostly now. We were talking about our top 10s, right?
Yes.
And we had said, we think our top 10, what we want to go with is 5 each competitors that we had, could be at any stage of our career. 5
any
people,
stage.
Any stage of your career. So you can go young. I've got
I always picked mine, so I didn't go young. I did old.
Okay. Mine are, again, I don't have I fought this guy at a Grand Slam final. Like, I don't have those stories. So mine are mostly younger.
A 10! A 10! A 10!
Gentlemen.
You want to go first?
I go first?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think of these 5, like, if I have to pick my five like different nemesis I had all my career.
Okay.
I start, of course, with the Canadian Arthur Majiridon.
Okay. I like
we go far back. We are the same age, so
right.
We've been fighting with each other since we were juniors, and I think we have won in juniors, and then when we were seniors, we always won. He won one time, I won one time, he won one time, I won. Always changing who won. And then I think when it was around 3-3 or something, it was his turn supposed to win. We were fighting, and I beat him.
Right.
And I remember after the fight, he's like, Tommy, come on, it was my turn. You know that. And then me, after the fight, we were always good friends. And on the mat, we were fighting so much. But when the match was finished, then we could have jokes with each other, and fun game, fun friends afterwards. So it's one of my.
I saw a social media post, and it was talking about the beauty of judo and the friendships of judo, and it was one of the times he beat you, and so he throws you, and then you guys hug and embrace and sort of not exactly laugh it off, but kind of, and Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Like
He was
knowing
always-
Arthur too. Like
even
just
yeah, those times he won, I was still happy, and those times I won, he was still happy. We
right.
could like really, we had the competition, and then we could be friends afterwards.
Right.
I remember one time in Tokyo when we were fighting each other in the bronze final. Then I think I did a sumgeisha tumunai or something, and he would just push me down and said, "Oh, Ippon!"
Right.
And then I just looked at him. He looked at me, and he started laughing. I started laughing. Then I remember like, now that was bad for you, because now I'm totally relaxed. I'm so relaxed now because you're making jokes with me during the fight. So
Right.
now I will win. And then 30 seconds after, I won this fight.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I just remember he was making a joke in the fight. And like,
Yeah. What a battle. You guys had so many battles.
Good battles. I miss those. But I think I will have one more battle in the future. So we can figure something out.
Okay. We need that's what judo needs, man. We need judo super fights, right?
Yeah.
We talked about this before, the Iliadis Jung. We need like a super fight promotion that we put on like matchups people are just dying to see.
Me and Arthur, I will promise you, we'll have one fight every 10th year. And then we do a rematch. Then 10 years after, we do another rematch.
Right. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah,
I hope he takes a challenge.
Yeah, that'd be why not? You know, especially if we can turn this into a paycheck for you guys. That'd be cool. Do a pay-per-view of super fights. Tommy and Arthur, Jung and Iliadis. We could generate millions of dollars here. We're gonna be rich with this. My first arch nemesis is far less famous and wasn't on the national team, but there was this kid. He came from a family of 3 from Bill Cato's club. There was Mohammed, I think, Magid, and Magid was the middle one. Also Carey was their name, and I forget his name now, but the youngest brother of the 3, and they were pretty good. This kid and I would just every tournament. It'd be like the finals. Like it was like 3 years every single time. And I just got it was so frustrating and so hard. It was around that time that I almost quit judo, 10 to like 13. And every tournament I fought this guy, and he was almost always the final block. And it was similar, except I was like young and didn't control my emotions as well. And it'd be like, I'd win one, and then he'd win one. And then I'd win one, and he'd win one. And this just went on for like ever. Haven't even thought about that name in a long time.
You were not friends afterwards, or?
Well, we were like 13. He I think he ended up quitting judo at some point. His whole family was pretty good and like really nice family. It was just like this super competitiveness between him and I that went on a few years, and then they left judo. So I don't know. I haven't seen him since I was like a prepubescent boy, 12 or something years old. 12, 13 is probably the last time I saw him. So that was my first nemesis though in judo. Also Carey. What was it? I can't remember his first name.
Then I have to think more back.
Yeah.
Next time you will hear about my first nemesis.
Yeah. Number 2. Who's the number 2?
If someone asked me who I thought was the hardest, my hardest opponent on the World Tour, I always say it's Rustam Uruyov. Like, when I think about him and Arthur, they are lefties. But Uruyov, Rustam, I really hate his style. Like, it was really uncomfortable for me. He goes left back, I have a right back, and I could never feel like I could control him. I beat him 2 times in the most important fights. Like
was it the European final or European semi?
European final and 1 Grand Slam final.
Yeah.
No, I think he beat me only in 1 final in a Grand Prix, or he beat me like in the first fight. So he won the less important fight. But with him, I never feel comfortable fighting him, and it's the same in training camp. I think sometimes he could throw me like 10 times in 4 minutes in training camp, and then like I have no idea how to fight him.
Yeah,
it was hard. Like with some guys, you don't. Some guys are really hard to fight, and you don't figure it out.
Right. Yeah. He also has an Olympic silver medal, Rustam Uruyov, Azerbaijan. Is who you're talking about. a world silver and an Olympic silver as well.
I think he doesn't he have 2 silver at Worlds. 1 Olympic silver and 1.
Yeah, Rio Olympics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a tough.
Yeah, he has a
tough
lot
player.
of, and then lot of Grand Slam medals and
Right.
legend from Azerbaijan.
Yeah. And then handed the keys over to Hidorov, who then becomes an Olympic champion.
It's fun because he was always number 2 after Rustam, and now when Rustam is gone, Hidayat really step on the big podium, and he took European, World, and Olympic gold this year.
Yeah. And at one time, he had moved up to 81 just because Rustam had the spot. But, that's a big move.
And Rustam also went up to 81 because Hidayat had the spot. But then Rustam win the Masters, and then he got the spot again. Then he goes down again. So,
oh my God,
like going up 81 and yeah.
My second nemesis that I'll go with was a guy named Bobby Curry. His son is actually competing on the national tour now. So we have this event here called the Canada Winter Games, which is pretty cool. So this was sort of the height of our battle, And Canada Winter Games is every 4 years, so you can only make it once.
Like Olympics.
Yeah, like Olympics. And everything's paid for, and you get all this swag, but it's only 1 per division per province. And so I fought him in the finals for the qualifier to go to Canada Winter Games. And I think the final score was something like Wazadi 2 Yukos Coca to like Wazadi Yuko for me. Like, it was just like this battle, and the place was like going mental watching us. We would have been like, I don't know, 16 years old or something. He ended up beating me, going to Canada Games, getting all the gear. I was the alternate, so I went to the training camps, but I didn't get any of the gear, and the gear was sick. And then he went to Canada Games, and he took the gold medal. I think he was out of judo at 18 or so. His son now does judo. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But that's like one of those stinging losses of your career. It's like, I wanted to go to that. It was cool. And the Ontario team, which was really strong then, like the girls, I think the girls took every gold medal, every single weight class from that province. And the guys, I think we took 3 of the 7. So like the team was super strong. And yeah, he ended up winning Canada Games, and I was the alternate. Bobby Curry in the 1999 or something like that. Canada Winter Games. Yeah. That's my number 2. Who you got? That was my second, right? So you're on number 3.
My number 3. Who did I pick for my number 3? My number 3 I take is Denis Yarchev from Russia, the one we talked about last week also.
Yeah.
I remember I think I lost against him 3 times, and then I had him in the final in the Cancun at the Grand Prix there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, this can be a tough fight.
Yeah.
And then I remember in the beginning of the fight, he did his Kosodogari.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, it didn't work. It didn't throw me. Maybe I can win this. Because with him, he was a right player. He was a righty, and he could always take his grip on me. And I knew I was fucked. I knew he was gonna throw me soon.
Right.
But at this Grand Prix Cancun, I could really feel that he was so strong this day. And then I'm like, okay, now I have to take this opportunity, and then I throw him 2 times with Kosodogari as well. Right.
Well, that's funny to throw him with it. And the thing that's amazing is, like, I would say, just without a statistic, it's like 90% of his throws was this switch Kosodo. So it's like he created such a reaction, even though he rarely threw people with these. The reaction he created was so spectacular, and his switch Kosodogari, oh my, it's my favorite that I've ever seen, the way he did it. And it was just so huge when
it was so hard. It was so hard. Like, I don't know how many people got concussion for this.
Oh, he was a killer. He had a good career. I don't know off the top what his major results are, but he was always like, he was a world championship, I think. Yeah, he was good. Okay,
he's also coaching now in Russia.
Oh, he is, eh?
I think he has his own lawyer.
The Russian that I loved, my favorite Russian judoka ever, was Makarov. It's actually my favorite match ever was his 2001 world final against Kanemaru. 73 kilo Makarov Kanemaru 2001 world final. It's like my favorite match ever. He was a beast, that guy. Okay, my number three. Number three, let's go with Nick Del Popolo. So Nick Del Popolo, trained with him a lot. We became buddies. But the first time I fought him, he was a couple years younger than me. He would have been like a late teen. And I fought him at a Rendezvous Canada. And I didn't know who he was. He came from Jay's Club. And he was just his judo was so technically beautiful, like his entry and everything. We had this battle. I ended up losing my penalties, and I was not happy at all. I don't know. I didn't know who he was. I just saw him as this kid, and I just remember.
How old were you then? You said?
I would have been like, I don't know, 19 or something, and he was like 16, something like that. Maybe a bit older. Maybe he was 17 and I was 20, like something in that range. But maybe 16 and 20. I don't know, but I just was like, who's this kid? I never seen him before, and he beat me, and I wasn't in a good place, because I was hoping to get better at judo. My results weren't great, and I remember just being so distraught that I lost to this kid. I guess in hindsight, I look back, and he ends up being a 2-time Olympic 7th place finisher twice with some of the most technically beautiful judo I've ever seen in North America. I feel better about the loss now, but at the moment it was pretty tough. Like, what is going on? So it's just a lot of self-reflection about how terrible I was at judo after that loss. But this tournament, Rendezvous Canada, used to be stacked. Like when I fought that day, I think Jimmy Pedro was competing, and yeah, it was a really tough tournament back in the day.
It's not tough anymore, or it's not there anymore.
No, but you'd have I remember watching Jason fight and Alexander Chupe and Nicola Gill and Keith Morgan and Jimmy Pedro, and yeah, it was really, really tough. Justin Flores. Yeah, it was a really tough tournament.
I also fought Nick one time. He broke my rib.
Oh, really? Where was this?
It was in a Grand Prix in Zagreb, maybe Budapest.
So what did he? So he threw you?
Yeah, he threw me that, but I broke my rib the first 20 seconds.
How did that even?
I don't know if it's his knee that comes to my rib or something.
Right.
But it's it was the first 20 seconds. I stand up, I look down at my rib, and my coach was like, "It's on the muscle. It's on the muscle." I'm like, I could just see how the rib is going out. Like, okay. And then I continued fighting it was when it was 5 minutes, I think. And I continued fighting with him for 4 minutes. And then when it's 30 seconds left, I'm like, okay, yes, one push. And I can throw. And then I went to Chumata, and then he countered me for Vasari. And I'm like,
oh. He, another lefty, right?
Yeah, another lefty.
Yeah. Lefties are the worst. A lefty with an Uchimata.
I think with him, I think it was my rib next time.
Oh, yeah, that's rough.
And I remember I get off the fight, and then I showed from my coach, you're like, that's not the muscle.
Right. Yeah.
And then I went directly to hospital from there.
Oh. Yeah, I've bruised a rib, but I've never broken one. And just bruising my rib was horrible. I bruised it playing rugby. It's terrible. So we're into your number, what are you at? Number 4.
Number 4. Then I take one, not my worst enemy, but one of my fun enemies from the tour. It's really I don't know why, but I take the Israeli Putbull.
Okay.
And that's just because, I have fought him 5 times, and I won over him 5 times. And I always win easy with him. I think he must really hate to fight me because he's a really good player. But every time he fights with me, it's just going down for him.
Really?
For sure, I when I train with him in training camps, he's really good. But in competition, I have 5-0 against him, and I think that he must think oh, Tommy is the worst. Right. I don't know. I don't know, but can it be luck 5 times?
I don't know. We've talked about this though. Matchup style. People don't match up well with different styles, right? So maybe
Yeah.
it's like a stylistically you with the greatest grip in the world and your weird reach. Maybe it
But
wasn't.
it's
He's a
like
good player.
I know my style with Rustam. Rustam has easy with my style, I think.
Mhm.
But with Will, I don't think I think we're like similar good.
Right.
I always beat him.
Yeah. Yeah. Did did you ever fight against Sagi Muki when he was 73?
No,
No way.
maybe I mean junior. I don't know.
Okay.
Never a senior. No,
Yeah.
but I think my style would be good against him.
Yeah, he had a hot run though. He had a hot run. Around the same time, your best performances in your career, probably around the 2019 to 2021 range, probably best result wise. That's where you win the
It must be
Europeans and
earlier.
World Silver
He won the Europeans in 2018, right?
and he
In his,
won Worlds. I think 2019 Worlds, the year you won, maybe he won the same Worlds.
I get second in 21.
Yeah, the year you won Europeans might be the year he won Worlds. 2019.
Yes, he did. That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, and then he won Europeans either 20 or maybe the same year or 2020 he won Europeans, I think, and they had Europeans
The
in
first time
Israel.
he won the first time Europeans in 2018 when it was in Israel.
Okay, oh, it's 2018 in
Home
Israel.
sold for him.
Yeah.
But I think maybe 1-2 times, right?
Maybe I'm not sure, but I know the world.
I think my style against him is good because my arms are low. They don't go up. They are
Right.
low.
Right. If you reach up on him, he's
My arms is around his hips.
Yeah, and you're not grabbing the collar, so it's not as accessible, right? Because he'll punch that collar either way.
I also think that's why I beat Hashimoto 2 times because I don't take the grip up. I take the
Right.
grip down.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Number
Okay.
4.
My number 4. I'm gonna go with my brother, just because I did so much judo with this guy. You talked about it before too. I did so much judo with my brother. He's usually a different weight class. He's 2 years older. And I just remember there was one time where we fought. It was for a bronze medal, Quebec Open, I think. And I was having a really good day, and I went up and I had to fight him. Now I'm not making an excuse exactly, but as the little brother, there felt like I didn't want to beat him to some degree. I would feel bad for him. And as the big brother, it's like my brother can't win. So he has to kill me, right? So I think I was winning the match, and then he had pretty good Ashiwaza. But I couldn't like focus, And so I think it was like I was winning, and I think 30 seconds left, he just bombed me and took the bronze medal from me, snatched it from me. Yeah. So haven't got over that loss either. My top 5, by the way, is a history of losses. Mine seems to be who I lose to all the time. Seems to be my top 5.
Were you fighting a lot of times with each other, or
we would train together forever. In tournaments, when we would fight in Ontario, we would sort of just give one or the other. This was the only time I remember where we really, really competed against each other, and I hated every second of it.
I never fought against my brother. I think I have to let him win.
It's the worst. It's like the worst feeling.
Yeah.
Not my favorite. Okay, we're on to your number 5.
My number 5, I have to take Lasha Shadowashvili, the one I lost against in the world final.
But you beat in the European semifinal.
Yes, I beat in the European semifinal, but lost in the final. So he will always be the one I lost against.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing how the losses are the ones you hold on to a lot more, huh? I think like those sit with you a lot longer. And Lasha's resume is like so sick. He has all of the Olympic medals, a gold, a silver, and a bronze.
And nothing.
Yeah, and a nothing. He's got them all. Yeah. And a nothing.
Yeah, everything. No.
Yeah. But yeah,
he will always be the one I lost the world title to. So
right. Yeah. Yeah. How do That's a funny one, huh? Like, okay, here's a weird question. If in hindsight it could be done over, gold's not an option because it's about being miserable. If you could have either won silver, which you did, or if you had lost that match in a semifinal instead of the final and then won bronze, if everything else was the same, would you rather be the world silver and end?
I would be world silver. I was in the
Okay.
final.
Yeah,
Still, I
yeah,
was. I can
that's
say
true.
I can say I was in the final at the world championship. Uh,
Yeah.
that's better than bronze. Silver is better, but
You're
still,
just ending on
I
it's just
lose
ending
the
on a sour note, right?
title. Yeah, I lose the title and
Right.
it's tough. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
he will always be the one I lost against.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. My last one is going to be Nick Tritton. So Nick and I think we started competing at like 13. And what people might not know about Nick Tritton, and I don't think he'll take this badly, but when he was young, he wasn't that good. Like I, he'd go to tournaments and he'd lose a lot. He's one of the most persistent, one of the people that like believes in himself more than anyone I knew, that when it didn't seem like he should, like he just showed up and trained and he'd go to tournaments and he wouldn't win very much. So when I was the alternate for Canada Games, he was telling me, I think he was the semifinal that I had. I think I beat him in the semifinal. I don't remember. And then I lost in the final to go to Canada Games. But him and Nick and I must have fought like 100 times. Like we've fought for so long until the end, and we were always the same weight class. And yeah, I definitely won some. And the one thing I sort of hold pride in is honestly, I don't think he bombed me one time. And I mean, this guy, I've seen him bomb people. And usually I'd end up losing by like some penalties or something. He'd just come at me like this beast sort of and just chug into me. And he ended up having an amazing career. He was the first Canadian with back-to-back medals in the Tokyo Grand Slam. I think he was ranked 5th in the world at one time at like 21 back in like 2005, 2004, something like that. Yeah, he was just a really like just so tough, and didn't matter what you did, he just came at you. Like it was like Michael Myers, or like like a horror creator where it's like the person's running away screaming, and no matter what they do, the guy just keeps going. He just keeps coming for them to kill them, right? And it was like you'd be tired. It didn't matter. You're like, you're in gold or whatever, you're in the match, and he just keep chugging along towards you and just wear you out like emotionally and physically. And got to be the toughest competitor that I put my hands on. And when we were in Montreal, we trained together all the time, and that's when we became more friends and still in good contact. But man, he was tough, really tough player. So that's my number 5 with a bullet.
So if you have to pick one of these 5 to have another super fight, Josh Hagen against one
Okay.
in a super fight.
In a super fight.
Yeah,
Okay, I gotta say, I gotta be Nick Tritton, but he weaseled me a little recently. So what happened is I wasn't training. Okay. I coach all the time, but he was training, but like still coaching, but he was like training. So he's in like good shape. So I come to his dojo as I'm driving across the country to bring my kids to the East Coast just for a fun trip. I teach a bunch of the class and show some technique. And then he sort of pulls it on me that we need to do a round of randori because we haven't in forever. But he's been like training, and I haven't been, and I'm on home soil. So suddenly I'm doing a round of randori with Nick in his dojo with all his students cheering for him in front of my children, and I'm not in good shape. So he beat me, shocker, and I just feel like I need revenge. So maybe one day when he's not looking, I'll get really jacked and I'll feed him a bunch of ice cream, and then when he's done eating it, I'll be like,
Josh, you should also train up for the super fight.
you, I
You
don't
have
know.
to be in shape for a super fight.
I don't know if I'm super enough to meet this super fight, but
Yeah, you have to. We have a super fight soon, so
we have to have every card needs prelims. Most people don't know who they are in the prelims, so I'm fine. I can be the prelims, and if we're doing a super fight and I'm in a prelim card, I need walkout music. I get some walkout music for this.
everyone can it.
Yeah, but that's what I want. I don't even care about the fight. I just want to walk out on the mats to music and like head bobbing, you know what I mean? And like get ready to battle. Me, Tommy Macias, the winner is the champion of the
I'm
podcast.
not fighting you. I'm fighting.
Yeah. No. I've just decided I'm changing up. Our super fight is me, left-handed, which makes me automatically a nemesis of yours. The winner is the champion of the podcast forever, and from then on, whoever wins.
But then we have to follow the podcast rules. There's no passivity Shido and there's no lefties. So
Well, no. I'm a lefty, and from then on, whoever wins, my name, because I'll probably win. You then don't get to call me Josh anymore. You have to call me Sensei from then on during the podcast.
Sensei, I can call you
Yeah,
Sensei.
Yeah, the winner. That's what I want. Or coach.
You call Sensei.
You can call me
like
you can call me coach. Or how about champion? Anytime we talk, instead of saying Josh, you say yes, champion. Sort of like chef.
Agree with that. Yeah. And
champion.
If I win, you say champion to me.
Champion, yeah. Champ or champion. I think that's the winner gets to hold that title in our friendship forever. Is champion forever after a super fight.
Until next year.
Yeah, I think we should wait. I think we should wait to do this super fight because I'm 10 years older. So my testosterone production is probably in the ground. So I think we should wait until I'm 65 and you're 55.
Then you will be
And you're old.
Easy for me.
And I'm old, but at least you're old too.
You're old. No.
Right now you're like close to your physical prime.
I think it's getting worse for you if you're 65 and I'm 55.
Okay, what if I go on what if at 65 I'm on TRT and you're not? Testosterone replacement therapy. What if I start? Then I got a shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the move. I wait till we're older. I go on TRT. I get Matilda to fatten you up.
We just do it in Canada, and then I have jet lag, and you have not jet lag, and it's easy for you.
Yeah. Okay. For the next year, I'm gonna get Matilda to just constantly have Danish desserts in the house to get you fat.
We have those all the time.
We need to fatten you up so that so I can at least slow you down a little,
Okay, looking forward to next super fight.
Yeah, that'll be good. We need to plan this. Did you
1st of September 2025? Okay.
When are we doing this super fight?
1st of September 2025.
Okay. We have a date. I'll talk to the pay-per-view people. You know where we should do the fight? I think we talked about this, but I think with the venue, we should definitely do it in the Sphere. It's going to be big. This super fight's going to be big. So the Sphere in Las Vegas, or the other place that I'll accept is the Budokan in Japan. That'd be good.
I'd rather go to Las Vegas, actually.
That'd be a good venue. One other thing I wanted to mention. Last thing that I wanted to mention. I don't know how much you saw, but as a fan of Ashiwaza myself, and I know you're an Ashiwaza guy, spectacular Ashiwaza, and not everyone in judo is. I watched some of the Grand Prix this weekend. I don't know if you saw any, but what I did see from this Grand Prix was I saw some really beautiful Ashiwaza. I can't name names off the top of my head, but I saw quite a number of really beautiful foot sweeps. I think foot sweeps is like the epitome of beautiful judo. It's so effortless, when you have a nice one. And I saw a surprisingly high number. Also, Coralie Godbout of Canada, bronze medal. Boom. But yeah, I saw some really beautiful Ashiwaza this weekend. So I don't know if you saw anything that stood out to you.
Yeah, me as well. I think I saw 2 or 3 Kuchi counters.
Right.
The one I also do. So it's like, okay, now.
Yeah.
Now starting to come. And yeah.
Yeah, I love seeing really beautiful Ashiwaza. There's nothing better. What was one of my favorite throws ever? I mean, technically it's a block, not really a foot sweep, but Muneta, his Sasai Tsurukomiyashi back in the day, heavyweight Japanese. Watching this guy that was, what do you think? 165 centimeters at heavyweight.
He's so tall. Okay.
You think shorter? Yeah, not so tall.
And with him it was, if I remember right, it was always one-handed. He had one hand, and then
and he'd sort of lean, and then you just launch these monsters. But that's one of my favorite throws ever, is watching Muneta do Sasai Tsurukomiyashi. So yeah, I always love seeing good Ashiwaza. Have you come up with our solution for our sign out yet?
For
Our sign out for the end of the podcast. Do we have a solution to this yet? We haven't come up with one.
was it my job to do?
I think so. The jobs are yours, and I'm just here for the ride, I think.
Yeah. I really like what you are saying when you get out of the mat, like, get out.
That's the one for now.
For now.
So yeah. Subscribe, like, go to YouTube, go to the Instagrams, follow all the things.
Tell your friends about it.
Tell your friends, let them know that it's fantastic, and comment and send us messages and all that stuff. And thanks for checking out another episode. Until next week. How about that? Huh?
Get out.
You say get out, and then I say until next week. There's a sign out. Very, very fancy.
So say it one more time.
You say get out.
Get out.
Until next week. Nailed it. Perfect.